Everyone, good evening. Good evening. I think we are really close to 7 o'clock. I'd like to get our meeting started. We're looking for a password for Wi-Fi, and I think Bert might have it. No, it's a secret. Oh, one of our new board members has everything digital. Oh, it's certainly not my generation, but anyway. I'll try. So
I find it easier.
I have a problem tonight in that my cell phone died on the way up. So to time everyone like I usually do for public comments, I'm going to have to ask for some help from James, just to let you know. So anyway. I'm going to call the meeting to order for February 7th, and I'll ask for the roll call, please.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors, City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office, City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission,
Ivar here.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, CCAG Airport Land Use Commission, Town of Atherton.
Here, Elizabeth Lewis.
City of Belmont. City of Brisbane.
Here, Madison Davis.
City of Burlingame.
Here, Ricardo Ortiz.
City of Daly City. City of Foster City.
Here, Sam Hindi.
City of Half Moon Bay.
Harvey Rohrback.
Town of Hillsborough.
John Mullins here for Alloys.
Do you want to come sit up here? Yes.
If
alternates do come sit.
If you're his alternate,
yes.
We are actually one short for quorum, so that would make 12.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Uh-huh.
It's no longer voluntary.
Could you tell me what your name is again?
John Mullins.
John Mullins.
Pacifica resident.
City of Menlo Park. City of Millbrae.
Annie Oliva.
City of Pacifica.
Sue Degree.
Town of Portola Valley.
Ann Wingert.
City of Redwood City.
Janet Borgens.
City of San Bruno. City of San Carlos.
Ron Collins.
City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco. And Town of Woodside. And with that, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We do have a fair amount of new members and alternates, and I just want to give us an opportunity to have them introduce yourselves if you're a new member, and to let the public know who that is, and we welcome you to the roundtable. So can we start on this side? So we're going to do Annie.
My name is Annie Oliva. I'm from Millbrae, and this is my first meeting, and I thank you for having me here.
Okay, Annie Oliva from Millbrae. So Diane Papin, San Mateo, I think you need to get your name tag, and then you can, it's on that table. That's why I kept going like that. Okay. Yes. That is you. So come find a seat. Welcome. We're going around and introducing the new board members, or their alternates. Next is.
Hi, I'm Madison Davis with the City of Brisbane, and I'm filling in for Terry O'Connell, who is off in Mexico,
Nice.
but she should be back next meeting.
Thank you. Going on down, we'll go to the far end, Miss Papin.
Hi, I'm Diane Papin, and I'm representing the fine city of San Mateo. Glad to be here, and I'm a SFO Roundtable version. So go
Yes.
easy on me.
Yeah. Well, you did go to the technical working group, so technical working group. Yes. Now, do you have an alternate? Are you the one and only appointed person here?
I'll have to check on that and get back to you.
Okie doke. Well, we expect to see you at every meeting going forward. So we'll go all the way down to the end there.
I'm John Mullins. I'm Assistant City Manager of Town of Hillsborough. Alternate power voice.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. And Sam we know, and Ricardo we know, and Ron?
Hi, I'm Ron Collins, San Carlos City Council. I was the alternate for this, but we reversed the primary and alternate, so this is my first meeting.
Okay, great.
So just a real quick reminder that everybody up here try to speak into the closest microphone as possible. 2 reasons. 1, the meeting is live streamed, so we need to pick up the audio. 2, we use the audio to do the minutes and get that transcribed. So just help us out there with that.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. So we are glad you're all here. Our next item is a action item to approve a resolution for a longstanding member who was actually here in our December meeting, but he is traveling for this one. But we have a resolution, a proclamation for him, and you have a copy of it at the desk. So I'm not going to read all the whereases, but James did a really good job putting it together, and we'll make sure that he does. We give it to Ken Ibarra for his longevity on the Roundtable and Council. I think it was like 21 years. So he will be missed, and we are so happy that he's doing good things now. So I'll call for a motion to approve. So moved by Janet and a second by Ricardo. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? So that's a unanimous vote on that. So this is the time of year that we reorganize our board leadership, just as in all of the councils up and down the county. They reorganize in December. We always wait until we get our new members and alternates seated for the February meeting. So at this point, I'm going to open the floor for any nominations for the chair for 2018 for the Roundtable. Do I have any nominations from the floor?
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Elizabeth Lewis to retain her seat for 1 more year, at least.
That's Janet Borgens. Thank you. Are there any other nominations from the floor for any other candidate? Supervisor Pine is here, so he might have an idea. We're reorganizing the board and the leadership, so would you like to make a nomination for chair for 2018? Janet Borgens has nominated me.
You want it, Harvey?
I second that nomination.
Thank you. Okay, well, I've been having a lot of fun. I think I can do it 1 more year. So if there's any, do we have to call for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any, by affirmation. Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I promise I'll do my very best to do a good job for y'all. So then we have the vice chair. Do we have any nominations from the floor for our vice chair? We don't have our vice chair here. I didn't hear from him whether or not he's not here, but I don't know what his impressions are. Yes, Diane?
I would like to nominate Ricardo Ortiz.
I'll second that.
We have a nomination and a second for Carlos Ortiz for vice chair. Do we have any other nominations from the floor?
Who's second? Oh, sorry. And also, they're not getting any audio from,
This side?
so let's hear your voices.
Sue and I are going to do duet.
Please.
Okay.
Do you want me to repeat that? That I would nominate Ricardo Ortiz.
And that's from Diane Pappen, San Mateo. So seeing no other nominations from the floor for vice chair, I call for the vote. All those in favor for Carlos Ortiz from Ricardo, sorry.
Stick up.
For vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Any abstentions or no's? Ricardo, come sit down with me.
So just give me a hang out with
You were just buddying up with your buddies. No, you got to get used to this.
Well, gentlemen, it's been fun.
Yes, yes. Thank you all. And you can have a little acceptance speech, okay?
And then the party's at your house.
Hard work. She says it's easy. Yeah, right.
It's tight here. Just say thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the nomination and your election. So I appreciate it. I'm a resident of Burlingame, obviously. My drive here is very short, but we do have a lot of issues that we need to cover, and I'm happy to be part of this. So thank you, Chair Lewis, and look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next item, which is an action item on the calendar, this is a lot of housekeeping, so we have to do this in order to continue having a functioning board. So we're going to call for the approval of our roundtable meeting dates, time, and place for calendar year 2018. So, James, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. It's just as it's stated in the packet. It's basically same old. First Wednesday of every other month throughout the year. So today, April 4th, June 6th, August 1st, October 3rd, and December 5th. All those dates are been updated on our website as well. So,
any discussion on that? Anybody have conflicts you'd like to speak of? I'll call for the motion to approve.
Yeah, move.
That was Sam. A second?
Second.
Janet. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We've got this is just the regular scheduled meetings, but we can have other meetings if we want. Is that right?
yes, that's correct.
Or as we need. Okay. So going on to item number 6, we're going to open the floor for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. I do have some speaker slips. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers for items that are not on the agenda on this round, and maybe some more. So why don't we start with, that's okay. Okay. All right. So let's start with Ray Ramos from Pacifica, and then followed by Judith Keenan from San Francisco, and then Robert Holbrook from Mountain View. And James is going to do the timing of 2 minutes.
We on?
I think you're gone.
Okay, we've done this before, but a lot of the people in the public group here, we've been passing around a clipboard for those of you who may want to identify yourself with an email address to keep communications between the public. We have to do this because basically the Roundtable has you sign in, but that's for their private use, and they won't release that information. So I'll start this around in the public sector. Please sign it. Some of you already we know and have signed in before. You don't have to re-sign.
Just real fast to clarify, so we do have the sign-in sheet up there that's for the public, but it's the email that we have there is optional. So just like when you sign up for a distribution service, we want to be very cognizant of your privacy with the email. So that's why don't just farm it out.
Okay. The next speaker is Judith Keenan from San Francisco.
Before you start the timer, I'd just like to say that I know I'm not the only one. So, and I timed this so it might be a little over 2 minutes.
Microphone.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Judith Keenan.
Turned on the mic.
Oh, turn it on. Sounded like a wall. How's that?
Good.
All right. Good evening. My name is Judith Keenan. I live in the Bayview district of San Francisco near Candlestick Hill. In late November last year, I was awakened at 4:40 a.m. by the roar of a jet going overhead. 10 minutes later, the same thing. Later that morning, I recalled reading something in the Chronicle about SFO receiving a record number of complaints from Palo Alto, so I Googled it. This is what I read. 2015, the barrage of complaints began in March when the FAA rolled out Next Gen. The FAA says more planes now fit into each sector of airspace, yielding $133 billion in benefits to airports, airlines, and passengers from avoided delays and cancellations, reduced flight times, and fuel savings. Are we supposed to put up with this so that airports and airlines can make $133 billion? Our neighborhoods are not benefiting at all. I filed a complaint with SFO Noise and got an email from John Hampel, a noise abatement specialist. He said, FYI, SFO is owned and operated by the City County of San Francisco. SFO has no control over aircraft in flight. That's a function of the FAA. But no surprise, the FAA has no FAA noise complaint department. He did send me the link to the SFO Noise Community Roundtable right here. And I emailed Asha Safai, the SF District 11 supervisor who is part of this group. He said he's working with the congressional leadership to pressure the FAA to throw out Next Gen. I'm here to find out how that's going. The noise has only gotten worse, with jets passing over the Bayview, Visitation Valley, and Sunnydale in clusters morning, noon, and night. Phoenix sued the FAA last year, claiming the agency refused to make changes even when officials proposed I hear it.
Okay.
Darn, and I'm even deaf. Okay. Anyway, this morning as I wrote this, I jotted down each time I heard a different jet. 841, 843, 850, 855, 859, 907, 917, 919, 933, 947. When I moved to the Bayview, we didn't get any of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. So Robert Holbrook, followed by Lydia Koo and Charlie Wambecki.
I attended the technical working group meeting last week, and one of the comments I made was that I was disappointed that the Surfer 3 rollout was discovered as being up for comment like 4 days before the comment period ended. And nobody in the community knew about it. We had a big panic, got letters written from 4 city councils in the space of a couple days, which was pretty remarkable. Yesterday, I came up with what I think is a good solution to this, and I'd like to propose this to the Roundtable, and that is that the Roundtable add to its agenda a review of a roadmap, which would be presented by someone that you would name, that would contain major items of significant interest to the community. For example, the Surfer 3 rollout, the Big Sur, the reversion to the Big Sur overlay, the Class B changes to airspace, and those are stuff for those of us down the peninsula. I'd also like to see, as part of that, notification of when the comments are open, when they're about to be closed. And this doesn't have to be precise. It doesn't have to be, it's not something that anybody's going to hold anybody's feet to the fire on, but we don't have a mechanism to set people's expectations. And many of us in the audience manage expectations for hundreds of people. I do. And we heard, for example, in November, or maybe early December, that Congressman Panetta had communicated that the Big Sur overlay was going to be rolled out in August of this year. Well, it's not looking like that's happening, and we don't know where to go to get an update on that. So this business of assigning a representative to present an updated roadmap every month, or maybe 2 months, or maybe even 3 months, would help the community set expectations on matters of great importance to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Charlie. Oh, I said Lydia, but you let Charlie. No, that's okay, Charlie. You go ahead. Lydia is very sweet.
My name is Charlie Wambek. I'm from San Francisco. And as far as expectations go, my expectations have really not done too well, because it seems like, back in the old union days when I was writing grievances, we had a thing called fait accompli. it's already done, okay? We already have all the flights going over, and everybody in this room probably thinks the flights only coming over their homes. We do, but they come over all of our homes. This could be changed overnight, you know, but you know, it looks like corporations are getting into the business of making money. They did it with Uber, they did it with Lyft, and now they're buying airplanes. So it looks like we're just going to have more and more and more and more flights. And there's going to be no place for them to go except to start flying at night. And so I don't see this going away. Congress could do something about it. Everything goes back to the 1999 ANCA, Aircraft and Noise, whatever it is, Act. And what Congress needs is they need the courage to change the law. And nobody's going to do it, especially in this kind of an atmosphere. But, you know, we need to have our representatives represent us. And that's about it. You know, and I really thank Elizabeth and all the people that put on these meetings. I only come to support it. You know, back in the old days, I would have probably been a lot more active, but I'm getting old, and I want to do other things. So I thank you very much for doing this, and I hope we can be effective. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Lydia, and then Liz Lopez afterwards.
Good evening. Congratulations on the new terms, and hello to all the members of the San Francisco Community Roundtable. I am Council Member Lydia Koo from the City of Palo Alto. As part of my duties as a Palo Alto City Council member, I serve as our city's liaison to the San Francisco Roundtable and also as a representative to the ad hoc committee, advisory committee on the South Flow arrivals. The more I've learned about the complicated issues related to departure and arrival routes, airspace regulations, and aircraft safety, the clearer it has become to me that we cannot identify a solution to meet the needs of the residents we represent without partnering with our neighboring communities in pursuit of a systemic and regional set of solutions. With that, I want to say thank you to Chair Lewis and to Committee Member Ann Wengard, as well as to Bert Ganu and to James Castaneda for taking the time to meet with the Cities Association of Santa Clara County as they work toward forming the Cities Association Ad Hoc Roundtable on the Southern Peninsula to explore how the cities of Santa Clara and Santa Cruz counties, as well as San Mateo County and San Francisco, might work together to grapple with the challenges of airplane noise. I'm also thankful to the San Francisco Roundtable for exploring to include South Bay cities experience San Francisco noise impacts. I realize it's not easy. To that end, I believe in maximizing the ability to collaborate with neighboring jurisdictions on developing shared solutions and joint collaboration. It will only strengthen our ability to cooperate on these challenges together. The symbolism of our working together as cities is crucial. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Liz Lopez.
Hi, my name's Liz. I'm a resident of Visitation Valley, and our community, we live in the northwestern part of Visitation Valley, and we went from about a zero noise footprint to 200 planes per day overnight, and this happened about October 30th of 2017. I have one question. I want to know what the noise floats are on the data that we received from the San Francisco Abatement Office. And the reason being is that when I received this data, I wasn't able to represent the overnight shift of planes based on the data I received. So I don't know if it's for security reasons or what have you, but somehow the data isn't exactly representative of the overflights over our homes. So that's one question I do have. And the second question is, I don't know exactly how many other roundtables there are, like in the United States, but I wanted to know how we were communicating with them, how we were all utilizing each other's knowledge, information? And also, are we establishing a voter bloc across the United States? That's my question.
Good questions. Good questions. A voter bloc. All right. Okay. So thank you all for your comments, and I want to welcome Asha from the Supervisor of San Francisco Supervisor, which is your. He came in right after you spoke, Judith, and he's your representative here on the roundtable. And he has asked for a couple of minutes to speak on, because he has to leave the meeting early. So, Asha, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, everyone, for being a little late and having to leave early just this particular evening. But I did want to highlight to you, and I think all the members of the roundtable received the letter that we had written just last week, that Congresswoman Pelosi, after I had talked about it at our last quarterly meeting, we had Congresswoman Pelosi actually wrote a letter to the FAA asking for a lot of the requests and highlighting a lot of the requests that we've had here. She talked about rather than pitting communities against one another, maybe about different turning points and fanning out the flights and reverting back to previous flight patterns that existed prior to the next-gen system. And I think that's the problem that a lot of us have talked about. So that's at least on the departure side, and then talking about the arrivals and landings, we can get into further detail, but we're at least trying to get the attention. I know that Congresswoman Spear and Congresswoman Eshoo have been working on this for some time. We just haven't had the attention of our leadership, and so I know that Senator Feinstein also wrote a letter regarding her constituents in Southern California, highlighting the same points in the Southern California area. But this letter in particular that's addressed to the acting FAA Administrator, Daniel Elwell, is talking about dispersion of flights, affecting people's quality of life, and how they've been impacted by the next-gen system and reverting back to different turning points and fanning them out. Mm-hmm. The other thing I will tell you is that we've asked, working with our airport director and their lobbying team, as well as our lobbying team here in the mayor's office, to work with the folks in D.C. to get on the radar of the FAA, particularly as it pertains to a lot of the problems that I've heard here within the first year that I've been on this roundtable. So we're going to push aggressively on that and see how if we can have a lot of the concerns that I've heard and all of us have heard over the past year addressed, and we're going to keep the pressure on. And so hopefully we can work collectively on that. Thank you.
Asha, this is really good news. Do you have a copy of that letter?
I do.
That you could provide the roundtable?
Yes. I'll leave this, and then you can.
Okay. Thank you. Because I appreciate your proactive efforts on this, and the letter that you wrote that we did receive copies of, I think has really been instrumental in getting some action. And that's the only way, as we've talked, is through the congressional efforts to really make the changes that are necessary.
I was actually happy to see that Senator Feinstein had written a letter with a lot of the concerns that we have, and she wrote it on behalf of Southern California constituents, and so.
She lives in San Francisco.
Right, and so we're pushing, and that's just. But she represents the entire state, in all fairness, and she is a United States senator from the entire state of California, but she does live in the northern part of San Francisco. I only bring that up to say I'm sure we can get her to write a letter, and I have been in communication with her chief of staff, and so we'll continue that conversation. But I wanted to highlight the letter from Congresswoman Pelosi tonight and how I thought it was positive and how we're going to push at the federal level and keep the pressure on. So thank you.
Through the chair?
Yes. Sue.
Actually, Senator Feinstein, one of our Pacifica residents, Ray over there, wrote a very nice letter to Senator Feinstein and received a response, and she does show commitment, so I think we growing number of Congress people is very helpful.
As I say, I anticipate a letter coming from their office very soon.
Any other discussion on this? You saying goodbye now?
Well, I'm going to give you a copy of the letter.
You can give it to James, and he will distribute it to
There you go.
the members. We can share it with the members, correct?
Absolutely.
And it can go in our minutes.
Absolutely.
It's going to go on our website.
That was the intent. I
Good.
wanted to bring it tonight and put it into the minutes, yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, any other discussions on this? I'm going to close public comment period, item number 6. Our next agenda item is our consent agenda items number 7 and number 8. I have a request from a member of the public to speak on item number 8. Do you want to pull that item, Ray? It is a consent agenda item. It's item number 8. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Thanks.
We can move item 7.
So we're pulling item number 8 for. Let me just ask if there's any other member that has a comment on number 8 or even on number 7. Okay, so item number 8, 2 minutes.
Okay, in regards to packet pages 23 and 29 of the November and December director's reports, when you look about mid-page, they're giving the airlines with the most operations and the most utilized type of aircraft. What we're here concerned about is noise. I think what we need to do is, rather than show the operation level of airlines, show the airlines that are causing the complaints. Otherwise, I really don't care. I know what your operational tenor is. But what we're here for is to understand how those aircraft are causing noise. And you have the complaint histories. What you haven't shown here is why complaints are being filed. On your email submittals, you give options. Hey, my sleep, or quality of life, or work is being impacted. None of that is reflected in what the director's report is reporting. We need that type of data. Please give it in this type of report. As far as the fly quiet reports, your index really doesn't impress me. When you basically go across fleet and give an index that you consider is appropriate, it doesn't talk to the specific community complaint profiles. And that's what you need in these reports. It's a profile, why people are complaining. Thank you.
Okay. So bringing it back to the roundtable, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar? Yes.
This keeps coming up. I don't know if we have a definitive answer. Is at one time residents were, sending in their comments or their complaints, and they said it was wearing them out just to have to do that every 2 seconds. And at one time we said you don't need to do it. Can we really clarify, are we still agreeing that they will be heard even though they don't keep sending that same message? At one time we said, yes, you don't need to continue to do it, but I want to make sure. Answer next time, whatever.
If I may clarify, I believe the answer was you don't need to send in each and every one. If you would like, you may consolidate and send them in. So a day, a week, a month. We have many people that do that, either write them down. Many people actually, about 98% of our intake is through the app, stop.jetnoise.net. I know I'm plugging another person's app, but it's the truth. The public likes it and they adopted it.
All right, thank you.
Any other member comments on these two consent agenda items? If not, may I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approve.
Second.
A second? Who seconded it? Sue. Okay. So it's Janet and then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Our regular agenda, item number 9, information. Ivar Saturo, Director, San Francisco.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. A couple things to report on. One is our noise abatement specialist, John Hempel, is retiring, and so we are currently interviewing for a new noise abatement specialist to make sure we keep the staffing numbers intact. Related to outreach, our staff is attending other community gatherings like the Santa Clara County Cities Association and also the Oakland Noise Forum, and so we're helping draw that link between all of the conversations going on now around this subject. Portable noise monitoring, the noise reports are complete, the quarterly ones from the permanent noise monitors in Portola Valley and Woodside. The results are in this evening's meeting packet. We are also conducting ad hoc noise monitoring in San Francisco, and those results will be ready for the next meeting. We had a great presentation, I thought, last meeting around GBAS, that ground-based augmentation system, which is the GPS navigation system that the airport is investing $10 million in the technology. And there was a lot of interest and concern around GBAS, and I think the committee and the community needs to be well informed as we go forward with GBAS implementation because there was a lot of concern about, is this something else that further impacts our quality of life? And I think the commitment from the airport is that this is a program intended to give community relief. And so the commitment from the airport is that GBAS will have no negative impact to a community and will have likely positive impacts. So I want to assure the community that we're going to share information as we develop it around the GBAS designs and the community benefits, as well as how we're mitigating any impacts, and just bring you along at every step of the way, just so there's no lack of trust in the process. Because we see it as a system that we expect it to have a community benefit in terms of being able to customize arrival procedures that help avoid congested areas, as well as help higher altitudes on approach and give some noise relief through the higher altitudes. So that's the commitment from the airport, is to make sure that you're all informed along the way. We will have I took a lot of notes at the last meeting. We will have a presentation in the next several meetings as we start to put the plan and the program together around GBAS. It is about a 1.5-year program, 2-year program to design all the procedures. United is a partner with us and will help expedite the designing of these procedures. But that's the commitment you have from the airport. Vortex generators. These are for those who aren't familiar, they're a retrofit aircraft that help a certain frequency of noise on approach. And we are starting to understand the airlines that are now retrofitting aircraft with these vortex generator devices, and new aircraft are coming outfitted with this. But what we're going to do with airlines that don't have a plan within 3 years to have all of their aircraft at SFO with vortex generators, we're going to send letters and make that request of them that they do retrofit their aircraft as we understand what their fleet procurements are and their schedule for doing these vortex generators. We know what United's schedule is, and we want to reach out to the rest of the airlines to ask for their cooperation as well. So we'll be doing that over the next couple months and preparing letters to all of the airlines around those. And now we're also in the development of our second chance noise insulation program, and I introduced that a couple meetings ago. The airport has put aside in our budget $1 million a year to address noise insulation houses that have, under various circumstances, whether it was there's failed, they opted in from the original noise insulation plan, and then 20 years later they're seeing some failure in the noise insulation characteristics of the windows and the doors. That would be an eligible residence. For residents that opted out originally and now are experiencing more noise because of next gen, they will be eligible under our program. Houses that changed ownership, even houses that vested themselves in noise insulation, windows and doors, we would consider reimbursing those costs as well, as long as it all conformed to the criteria that we're establishing. So we'll continue to share that as we go forward. The budget will be in place July 1 of this year, and so we'll start contracting for services to address those houses. So more to follow on that. And that's all I have.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Yeah, could you tell me what criteria that you are using and where, with all the modern technology out here today, what components or criteria are you using for the new fix from what maybe had failed before? So what kind of materials or what's out there that is different from what we had before?
I can't speak to the quality of new windows versus old windows. The kinds of things we're going to look at is what's your interior noise levels. Okay. And when those, first of all, you need to be within what the defined 65 CNEL noise contours as they currently exist, and then what are those noise levels inside your house that are also part of the criteria. We'll use that as the benchmark for qualifications.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Sam?
Thank you. Regarding the vortex letter that will go out to airlines who will not be retrofitting within 3 years, is that simply a notification to them that they need to get with the program, or is that a requirement from the airport?
It's not a requirement. It is more of just the community stewardship that they should have for the community that they impact, and plea to, that United has very much leaned in on this and feels they want to help the community. We are going to appeal to other airlines also that they should also be part of this solution, that the community is suffering quality of life issues and they are benefiting financially from this, and they need to be part of the solution. So it's going to be that kind of approach with the airlines. That being said, we're looking at other options of incentivizing and other things at our disposal. I don't have a lot of promise around that, but we're looking at everything.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, and then Ann.
Just a quick question. What's the cost for the retrofit per plane? What are we talking here?
So, anyone, Bert, do you know the 20,000? For some reason, the number 6 in my head around.
Roughly. I recall right, it was about 3,000, 4,000. I can get the exact numbers for you, but it was in that vicinity.
$3,000?
Per aircraft, based on an economy of scale. So if you have a small airline doing a few aircraft, it's much more expensive. If you have a large airline doing a lot of aircraft and you buy a lot from Airbus, it's a good deal.
Right, that's the
aircraft
right
when removed from service is typically done during a large inspection, like a C or a D check, and they also have to defuel it because it's near the fueling port.
Just to follow up, Ivers, just to make sure I understand. My understanding is that the vortex generator, for those who are new to the group, is only affecting the Airbus aircraft. So with United having the largest number of operations, do we have any idea of how many planes we're talking about that are currently serving this airport?
We do.
Which airlines obviously have the greatest number of those? Obviously, United probably is leading the category just by its sheer size, and they obviously fly a fair number of Airbus. But it might be interesting, particularly for this one, to understand which airlines specifically would be most influential or contributing the most to this issue here.
You know, we have accumulated that information. We do know the airlines and the ones that fly the 319s and the 320s and the so we'll provide that report at the next meeting, and we also expect we'll have letters out by then anyway, so we'll update you at that point.
Great, thank you.
If I could, Bert, any idea how many aircraft that is total? There was a total number, and do you remember what it was?
Offhand, no, I don't remember that number.
Okay, it was, anyway, I don't want to misstate that, but it is a large number of aircraft into SFO, that type of aircraft.
Thank you.
Supervisor
On the installation program, so if I heard you correctly, that would not begin until July 1, your new budget year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And have you kind of reduced to writing kind of what all the qualifications are going to be? And it would be good for us to really understand those details so we could get it out to our constituents.
Yes, we're putting that together. We'll prepare a briefing at the next meeting for everyone's review.
Okay. And then lastly, with United, it's going to take them some time, I recall. I don't know if you know off the top of your head how long it's going to take them to replace their vortex generators. Isn't it 3, 4, 5 years or something? I don't know if you happen to know.
It was 5 years, I believe 25 aircraft a year or something like that. Bert, is that the number? I believe it was 25 aircraft a year for 5 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Question.
Sue, yes.
I really appreciate all the positive things you've said so far. I may be the only one who doesn't know this, but if I am, take me aside. But what is GBAS?
Oh, GBAS, thank you.
Oh, thank you. You weren't here last time.
I was here, but I don't remember what it was.
It stands for Ground-Based Augmentation System. It is not a federally approved navigation or adopted navigation system. It is GPS-based navigation, so the preciseness of aircraft locating is much more defined, and so it allows for more discrete understanding of where aircraft are and spacing of aircraft. And so it allows them to design certain patterns because they don't worry as much about the separation under less specific locating of aircraft.
Sounds frightening.
Okay. So I do have a public speaker card for this item. Ms. Wentworth. Kathleen. You're on. Kathleen Wentworth. She's the aviation consultant guru for Jackie Spear, Congresswoman Jackie Spear's office.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Wentworth from Congresswoman Jackie Spear's office. Ivar, just a couple quick follow-up questions, if you don't mind. It seems to me, and Bert can probably back me up or not otherwise, that it was maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when United came and made a presentation on their vortex generator replacement, something like that. And as I recall, at that time, year and a half, 2 years ago, they said it was a 3-year process that they were either imminently starting or had already started. Mm-hmm. And now we're a year and a half down the road, and they're saying it's now a 5-year process from now? I just want to make sure I understand. Is that what everybody understands?
Glenn Morse updated us about, was it 4 meetings ago? And gave us the 5-year and how many per year.
Okay, so that was 4 meetings ago?
Roughly. I can get the date for you.
That's okay. I'll follow up with Mr. Morris.
Good question.
Have they done any aircraft, Bert, to date?
They were to have completed 10 by the end of last year. So 10 in 2017.
And they did complete them? I mean, we know they completed them? Okay.
We will check. We will confirm that.
Okay, great. And for the other aircraft, for the other airlines, Ivar, you're gathering the list, their plans, and then you'll have a conversation with them via letter on
We will.
doing the good neighbor thing.
And reaching out. I plan on making calls as well and
great.
encouraging their leadership to take this on.
And with regard to G-Base, you said you thought the procedures could get expedited maybe a year and a half, 2 years?
Yes, with United's participation in the design of the procedures.
So United's going to design the procedures?
United said they would gladly assist in the design of the procedures, yes.
And do they have some criteria they're given as to what priorities they should make? We've heard a lot about the FAA prioritizing, beyond safety, prioritizing efficiency over almost everything else. And I'm just curious what priorities they're given in the design of these procedures.
So that's something we need to develop in a very collaborative way. That's the nut of the deal right there, is designing those in a way that benefits the community. And so that needs to be a very collaborative process. So there has been no starting of design at this point. Mm-hmm. It's all about preparing for stakeholder engagement.
And would you take input from the roundtable on priorities?
Yeah, of course.
I wasn't here, but I hear tell back in the pre-next gen, pre-OAPM days that FAA staff came here and promised that next gen would be the answer to everybody's problems, and that they would be able to design these routes around the people and everything else. And they sold a bill of goods. And just want to make sure, you weren't here then, but I think you have to understand that there's a level of skepticism that's going to be around any kind of process like this.
And that was the basis of my comments around GBAS, is because I get that skepticism, and that's why we're committed to being fully collaborative and open in this.
So once United comes up with some draft procedures, will it be an open process through the FAA Instrument Flight Plan Procedures Gateway process, or will it be through some other process?
You lost me there, yeah. Kathleen. You know more than I do on that. So,
well, normally most all, but not all procedures go through are publicly designed, not publicly designed, but publicly accessible to the public, at least for part of the time in the process. And that's done through the FAA's IFP Gateway, Instrument Flight. Is anybody here from the FAA who can answer this question better than I? And so there is some transparency there on the FAA website that people can see what has been filed and ultimately, review the product. And I just am curious, just wanted to find out if that's the same process that you're going to go through with the G-Base.
I can't comment on that specifically. What my commitment is that it'll be in a very collaborative way, including during the design of getting input and sitting and having sessions around the work products and input around the work products, and really being very clear about what they do and what they don't do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. We have one more speaker comment on this item. Mary Jo Fremont.
My name is Mary Jo Fremont. I'm from Palo Alto, and I want to echo what Kathleen said on GBAS. It can impact and help arrivals, and the GBAS tests that were conducted in 2016 by the San Francisco airport did not include any of the arrivals that come really near the main waypoint. There are 60% of the arrivals, so I would really recommend that we look at where the problems are, and we involve stakeholders from the roundtable, but other groups as well, the people who are really impacted, because the goal is to reduce impact. The FAA at the same time is working, not very transparently, on changing some arrival routes, and I don't understand, they've been at it now for almost a year and a half, and GBAS is not even part of the equation, and I don't think you guys are even talking to the FAA about redesigning some arrival routes in the context of GBAS. So involving stakeholders and the community, the people who are affected, is critical, and the priorities should be not about efficiency, but maybe about people and noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. So I'm going to close the comments on this item, and I'm going to, you gave me a comment sheet. That was on an item that had already been, okay. Okay, yes, thank you. Just wanted to let you know that I'm not ignoring you. Okay, so item number 10 is information, and I'm going to hand it over to our consultant, Jean Reindell.
Hold on.
Oh, did you? Oh, we're not done.
Part 2 of SFO updates.
Yes.
Just wanted to give you a quick look at, as we kind of evolve what we present in a format, having moved a lot of these reports to the consent agenda. And again, open to feedback here. We want to produce information that is relevant to what we're talking about, that adds context to the concerns that are being brought forward. And obviously, we defer to your input on what's worthwhile to include and what's not. And we also want to tell you what's going on at our airport. We want to be transparent about that. So kind of continuing the trend that we've been talking about, and that is, number one, to take a look at noise reports and kind of present them as a heat map. This is December of 2017. And Sue, to your question, this is a measurement of the number of people that have filed complaints, not the number of complaints. And that was based on some feedback from this group in a previous meeting. So 1,242 people filed reports with us in the month of December. And you can see the pattern of reporting. And if we start to overlay a map of flight tracks, in other words, where the greatest amount of flight activity is, you can really see that it aligns directly, no real surprise there, with some of that activity, whether it be down in Santa Cruz or at the Menlo Waypoint or in areas north of the airport. If we go right to that heat map, this is kind of what we're starting to look at as a way of documenting what we're hearing from the community, and that is the level of intensity, the amount of flights that are going overhead. And we'd like to contrast this with pre and post next gen. And we find that looking at this large map of the Bay Area, it's a little hard to see that in detail. So what we try doing, and again, we can look at different portions moving forward, is zooming in on a few areas. So here's a look at pre-next gen north of the airport. Really what in particular you notice are the gap departure. You notice what at the time was the port departure, which is that left turn departing the airport. So this is pre-next gen. And again, these colors indicate the intensity of flights. So cool blues mean there's a very wide dispersion of flights over a large area. The redder means it's more tightly focused. Now, if you look at December of last year, you can see how much more tightly, how much more focused that intensity is. And now the procedure obviously is the stick departure. It's no longer the port departure. But I think this right here really illustrates what we're talking about a little earlier, and that is the greater focusing of flights around these next-gen routes. We'll take another example in the South Bay. This is the Menlo Waypoint. This is that intersection of traffic that we have in the Palo Alto area. And again, this is before next-gen implementation. You can see there was a good bit of activity there already, but look how much more focused that intersection becomes when you add in the next-gen procedures. So to Supervisor Safai's comments about dispersion, this kind of feeds into that discussion a little bit. So again, we'd be happy to present other snapshots around the Bay Area, but I think you'll find that by zooming in a little bit, you can see really more graphically kind of what's changed over the last couple of years. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay, just a couple of updates, and again, we want to be transparent about what's happening at our airport. A couple of things coming our way. Air Canada is adding some service to Edmonton. That's one flight a day. Iceland Air used to fly at SFO. They terminated that in 2006. They're going to come back in June with 4 flights per week. And then Qantas announced plans to launch service to Melbourne. That'll be 4 times a week beginning in September. The Air Canada and Iceland Air flights are during the daytime. The Qantas flight to Melbourne, that's at 10 o'clock at night. In terms of airline outreach, our team, again, a big part of what Bert's team does is meet with airlines at SFO to talk about our Fly Quiet program, explain how the scoring works, and encourage airlines to fly noise-friendly procedures. Hong Kong Airlines and Iceland Air being new carriers, familiarization session. Kalita Air is a cargo airline. They've been at SFO for a while, and our team met with them recently to talk about their poor performance executing the shoreline departure. So that type of airline outreach continues. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
We have a public speaker request. Kathleen, would you like to, for this item?
Just a quick comment, if I might. Could you tell us what times of day or night that those new entrance flights are?
Yeah, so the Air Canada flight to Edmonton is an 11:30 a.m. departure. The Iceland Air departure is at 3:15 in the afternoon, and the Qantas flight to Melbourne is at 10 p.m.
And the landings back from those flights?
The Iceland Air flight arrives at 6:25 p.m. the day before. The aircraft's on the ground for a long time. The Air Canada Edmonton turn is about 90 minutes, so I believe it comes in around 10 a.m., and I don't know the arrival time of the Melbourne flight. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Thank you, Kathleen. I have a roundtable member, Ron.
Forgive me, this is my first meeting. Could you put that slide back up about that showed the three airlines and the outreach? One had Kalitta Air. When you say poor shoreline departure performance, what does that mean? I mean, it would seem to me that all airlines are given the same routes, flight pattern to follow. So I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Sure, and we present a greater level of detail in the consent agenda on this item. And essentially what it is there's a charted procedure that airlines are expected to fly, and there are reasons for deviations. And some of those are reasons that make good sense. They may be deviating for a safety concern, for example. That's a one that could be understood. Or perhaps there's a deviation out of a lack of awareness. Perhaps there's a deviation for some other reason. What Bert's team does is meet with those airlines to, number one, inform them that they're doing poorly on this performance, and number two, to flush out what are those reasons why, and to kind of enlist them to engage their flight ops group, in other words, engage their pilot community in really adhering to that. And the idea being that that conversation, that outreach, filters throughout their pilot community and raises the awareness to ensure that wherever possible. Now, again, if there's a good reason, a safety reason to deviate, that's understandable, but otherwise it's to push for as much adherence as possible. And Bert, feel free to add to that if you want.
So we're basically talking about the arrivals, the shoreline, like over Foster City. Is that the shoreline? Oh, the shoreline departure, sorry.
Yeah. Correct.
Which would
be thank you.
The other way.
Right turn inside of Highway 101.
Yeah.
These were wide.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
One more.
Ann, yes, sir.
Doug, I thought the slides that you presented, which showed the pre and post next gen, were terrific. And I can see applicability to a lot of other of the routes that we've been looking at, Bodega East, West. I mean, there's just so many that really you can see that impact. So I would encourage you, and maybe we can think systematically about what would be the most useful. But certainly as we're going through and responding to the FAA initiative, those charts are huge to really graphically show what's been happening for both departures and arrivals. So thank you for doing that.
That's really good. Yeah.
Okay. Going on to item number 10, we have a FAA Initiative Phase 2 update on our technical working group. We met on January 29th, and both of our consultants were there, Jean and Justin. So Justin has written a memo updating, which everyone received via email, and I think it's at your desk also. So this is a nice summary of what happened at the meeting, but Jean, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Yes, so we did meet January 29th. This is what the memo looks like so that you can see what we have done. So this was the second meeting of the technical working group. I would say the first meeting was informative and meant to ask the FAA the questions or things that we didn't quite understand. So that was the first meeting, kind of an overview with the FAA. The second meeting is really what I would consider kind of roll up our shirt sleeves and kind of get to work and really dig in deeper to each of the recommendations that were made by the roundtable, and then also the responses to the FAA, and then trying to figure out what we want to do or what the if there are any recommendations going forward. We also, prior to the meeting, had worked with the roundtable, Elizabeth as well as James, to come up with a process to go through these rather than go one by one, because a lot of them had very similar issues with certain communities and things. So we decided to put them into themes, if you will, or topic areas. And the first one that we decided to tackle was nighttime noise. And there's a number of reasons for that. Is that one, nighttime noise is typically more annoying than daytime noise, and so it also was the one with the most number of procedures that were recommended by the roundtable. We did not get through, as you can imagine, all of the nighttime procedures. We did get through 10 of them. I thought that was relatively successful. Again, for those 10, we presented a summary of the recommendations, summary of the FAA responses, and then a summary of the discussion that happened at the working group with each of those. We have about 4 more to go for the nighttime ones, and then the plan after that is to tackle the others and also themes, and the themes were near bay daytime operations, near bay daytime, one was departures and then the other was arrivals, then looking at specific runway departures and arrivals, and that is in the minutes here, or the summary, to show kind of the approach that we're going to do. Now, we did recommend this as the order, but certainly we could take some out of order if at one of the meetings people want to discuss something out of order. We could do that at the following meeting. So this is just giving us a roadmap, if you will, of how to get through all of those recommendations and come up with a good summary of each, and more specifically, what are the action items that come from this? For example, for the things that the FAA has agreed to implement, how do we monitor that implementation? How do we judge success of that implementation? So those are some of the action items that will come from the working group meetings going forward. Did I leave out anything?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to add to it that obviously the initiative and the response, I mean, it's very hard to get your arms around all of the items that we recommended and that they responded to in an organized way. And I really have to hand it to the team because we tried it a couple of different ways, and this last organizational way, you could kind of digest it little bit by little bit. And the working group worked well together, and we had good participation from the public, and everyone was respectful, and we really are trying to understand what we've got and how then we can measure and see if we're going to see any real effect of the new procedures. So I know that we've got some dates for the second technical group meeting in February. I'm going to turn it over to James. He's going to throw out some dates.
We're investigating some dates, but tentatively we're looking at either Thursday, March 1st or Thursday, March 8th. So we're hoping to try to secure this room again, because that seemed to be successful.
Yeah, it was in this room, so it was easy for people to get to. And
so I just need to confirm a few other things, but we're probably looking at one of those 2 dates.
Okay. And everyone is invited. It's not that it's not only certain board members that are on the technical working group. And it's really a good thing for the new members to come, because what we're all about is trying to figure out what the FAA has responded to our recommendations and how we can implement the good things that they say that they're going to do, and keep pushing them on things that they say that they can't do somehow. So it's really important, I think, to get involved and learn about it.
Elizabeth, if I could, just a couple more things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd encourage you all to take a look at the summary, because it kind of lays the groundwork of how we're going to continue. And if there are other things you might want to see for a summary, or other things you think to change or modify to that, we'd certainly be open to that as we continue down this process. Elizabeth mentioned it or alluded to it, but we are also, for the things that the FAA says they cannot implement, we're not just accepting that as the working group, and we are questioning that, trying to figure out if they understood what the request or the recommendation actually was. For example, there were one or two of the recommendations that we're not sure that they thought was nighttime only, because their response said that there was too much traffic and things like that. So we want to go back, question the FAA on some of those responses. But that information is all in there.
And I want to give a big shout out to Kathleen. She was invaluable at the meeting. She was, a wealth of information. And she's flown these skies, and she knows all the ins and outs and everything. So we are so fortunate to have her as part of our team here, and that Congresswoman Jackie Spears allowing her to participate with us. You're welcome. So.
I do have one more thing that came to our attention since the working group meeting. I thought it was worth mentioning. James asked me to go ahead and do that. One of the procedures we're going to be talking about in the working group is actually the SURFR procedure and what it replaced and what we can be looking at for changes. Well, we actually found out this week that there have been changes to the SURFR. Ara, I gave you a couple slides if you want to put those up. And this is just to let people know that the Roundtable just this week did become aware of some changes. So on February 1st, there were multiple aircraft navigation database providers that mistakenly released Amendment 3 to the SURFR, or SURFR 3, Standard Terminal Arrival Route, or STAR. It was intended to be published March 29th. And this kind of mistake, I guess you will, resulted in the SURFR 3 being loaded into Aircraft Flight Management Systems, or FMS, the instrumentation in the cockpit that guides the aircraft. SURFR 3 and SURFR 2 are unable to be flown at this time as a result due to changes in navigational points between the SURFR 2 and SURFR 3. Given those inconsistencies between databases, this is loaded in the aircraft FMS. So the FAA has temporarily discontinued both procedures at this time. The aircraft will go back to use the Big Sur Amendment 3 or BSR 3 STAR until errors in the aircraft navigation-based databases can be fixed and SURFR 3 reloaded correctly into the aircraft FMS. So what we have as of February 1st, just a few days ago, the SURFR 2 has been replaced with the Big Sur Amendment 3 or BSR 3. March 1st, there will be another change. The SURFR 2 will go back and replace the Big Sur. And then March 29th, as the original expectation was to be from the FAA, is that the SURFR 3 would replace then the SURFR 2 as expected. If you go to the next slide, please. So we did a little bit of research on what these changes look like. Well, actually, if you go back to the previous one, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So what you're looking at there is the SURFR 2 is in the red, the Big Sur is blue, and then the SURFR 3 is green. And so you can see that it is going to be shifted back to the west of where it was with SURFR 2. And then once SURFR 2 and SURFR 3 are ready again, it will switch back to that eastern component. Now, if you go to the next slide, please. So we made some speculation, and these aren't, please don't think these are cast in stone. It's just what we see from the different charts that are published by the FAA. The SURFR 3 is at 6,000 feet at Eddy, and it also terminates at Eddy. Eddy is a waypoint. It's just a point in space. Whereas the SURFR 2 is at or above 4,700 feet at Swells, which is close to Eddy. Those 2 points are very close in proximity to each other. So you can see that the SURFR 3 is going to be slightly higher than SURFR 2 at nearly the same place. And the SURFR 2 is at 4,000 feet at the Menlo intersection. whereas at Surfer 3, altitude is similar near Menlo as Surfer 2, considering the approach amendments. So that's what we have. Thought it would take me a little bit less time to convey this, but just wanted people to be aware that we did learn of this mistake, change, and the changes that are still yet to come.
Can I ask you a quick question? We were talking with the GBAS system about the potential of a steeper decline at the Menlo waypoint, and they would maybe even be able to get up to 5,000 at the Menlo waypoint with the GBAS system, and then with a steeper decline after that.
Yes, they were saying when Boeing presented that at the last meeting that is one benefit that could come from GBAS, is that you could maybe have a steeper descent into the airport. I think they also said that that's also aircraft dependent to some means. Some aircraft would be better at doing that than others. For instance, a 757, which isn't flown a whole lot here anymore, but a 757 would have a really difficult time having a steeper descent into an airport than standard. But it is aircraft dependent as well as instrumentation dependency.
Okay. Anne? And then Harvey?
For those of us who were very deep in Surfer not too long ago, could you go back up to the first slide? And for those that weren't deep, it's even more confusing now. So just to make sure I understand where we are now, Jean, the primary shift as of February 1st has been to the west. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that goes back to the original Big Sur route, essentially, even though it's been renumbered, et cetera. And they did not, the FAA did not do any outreach to any of the roundtables, any local community groups, even after the select committee's work and everything that went on for many months. And we had not been told anything about what was happening with Surfer. Am I right in assessing it this way? Or is there something I don't understand about what they did?
I have not looked at, all I had time to do today was to provide this information, so I did not look at the outreach or
Kathleen,
the processes
sounds like you
they
might
have
know
done.
more about it.
Kathleen? Yeah.
Kathleen Wentworth, Office of Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Yeah, it's enough to make your head spin, back and forth, back and forth. I think, as I understand it, nothing was supposed to take place until March 29th. Somebody jumped the gun, and because they jumped the gun, they had to jump over and jump back, and then they're going to put it back on March 29th. Now, what's coming in on March 29th, however, is not the final product for Surfer. That's what you're thinking about, Anne. Yes. And so this is the temporary, the March 29th, as I understand it, is the temporary Surfer fix. And this was caused because, Anne will know this, there were some issues about the altitudes of the Class Bravo airspace, and aircraft were not properly contained within the safe confines of that airspace. And this goes back several years to when that procedure was first developed. Not clear why somebody didn't figure out that the airplane's doing this and they're not confined in the airspace, and it took them a while. They did a manual fix on it, which was that the controllers basically told the aircraft to level off to stay within the parameters of the Class Bravo airspace. Subsequent to that, after doing that for some time, apparently a number of no one here from the FAA to help me? A number of specialized safety reports were filed by controllers. There's a title for them, something red cards or red something reports. Anybody help me? That raised it to the level of the FAA management saying, okay, that's enough. We have to put in a temporary fix for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. So that is why there is a temporary fix for safety reasons pending the permanent fix that was approved by the Select Committee on South Bay arrivals. So the March 29th, which was, I think, always the date they were going to do it, is the temporary fix, which actually does do some interesting things. But the first two were just kind of jumping the gun and fixing that error.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
answer your question?
Yeah. And you know, when Than was here in December, she talked about the Class B being fixed. And she's with the FAA and saying that they were in process and that was going to be rolled out this spring, fixing the Class Bravo airspace, which would prevent the having to stair-step, power off, glide, level off, and power back on. Okay, Harvey, yes.
Your report indicates that there's an action item to send a letter from the Roundtable about the nighttime rerouting. We all discussed this at the technical working group, but I don't see it on the agenda, and I want to know what's happening. Are we going to send this letter or not?
Good point. So we spoke at the technical working group about sending a letter about the nighttime arrivals to our Congress people. I didn't remember that specifically. So
he is correct, and I apologize. It was not put in as an action item in there. So, and because it was just last week, like this was kind of quickly got in there. So
we'll make sure that we get it put together for this next one.
Thank you.
Ricardo.
Yeah, I have a real quick question. From what you're describing, then the airplanes are arriving at Menlo at a much higher altitude, so that tells me that they're going down a lot quicker between there and the airport. Does that make them a lot noisier?
Actually, I think it was that at Menlo they're at about the same altitude.
Oh, okay.
Prior to Menlo, they're a little bit higher.
Okay, we do have a couple speaker cards from the public on this item, so I'm going to open it up for two members of the public. That would be Jennifer Landerman and Ray Ramos.
I don't know where to start. I have a bunch of stuff. But about being able to descend quicker.
But Jennifer, you're going to speak on the item number 10.
It's about the Phase 2 report.
Yes.
Update.
Okay.
Yes. I really liked hearing the words transparency, trust, because what everybody feels the FAA does is sort of run a stealth operation with the assistance of sort of these sort of forums where we don't know what's going on in the communities. The broader public really doesn't know what's going on. So I really love the fact that there is going to be a lot of effort into that. There is the IFP gateway, as I understand it, there's a really great opportunity. That is a rule by FAA Order 7100.41A. And in the past, the working group that advised that process did not include airports. But as a part of lessons learned from NextGen, airports are there. And part of it is because you know the communities better. So that's a really great opportunity. And I think that has to be translated into practice, because right now what's happening, for example, with Surfer 3 is that we really don't know what's going on. Steve Carnes told us that before they did anything, they would come back and talk with the communities about what the impacts would be. Kathleen, we were also in a subcommittee meeting, and that we would have a lot of input before they implemented, let's say, the replacement to Surfer. It's not happening. So in order for us to believe that there is really going to be a process of transparency and trust, this particular route that has been widely debated needs to work out, because otherwise there won't be any trust in that process. It's going to be another stealth operation. So I just want to point that out. And in all of the heat maps, there's the issue of noise, right? Because we kind of have to know what, and that's another topic. Funny that this is all about noise, but right now we're still not there yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ray?
Oh, just a quick question about wingtips. The reason that, if anybody could explore this, Dennis Roberts gave it a presentation in Southern California, and that the reason that many aircraft may not be able to descend steeply is because modern aircraft has a different configuration, and that's kind of like really sad to know that the modern planes have to fly shallower glide slopes. So I'd like to know if maybe the Roundtable can investigate that and maybe explain that to the broader community, because I don't understand it. It would be good to know. Thank you.
First of all, I think it was important, and I've attended all the subcommittee, the technical committees, is we don't have FAA presence there. They supposedly have expertise in noise, but we haven't seen any. Further, they're in the initiative or the response phase 2 response, indicating they are in the process of relocating stick. And this is another procedure that has not gone through outreach to the public, nor it has through that phase 2 report been reported to this body. But we have not discussed the importance of stick to departures, although you saw some of it in the heat graphics, the channelizations. I think it's about time FAA put up more skin in this game, because they haven't so far demonstrated they have expertise in anything but delaying. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Gene. I'm going to close item number 10 and move on to our discussion of adverse health effects of airplane noise and current findings. And this is going to be an information item presented by Gene Rangel, our technical consultant.
Thank you again. At our last meeting, maybe last couple meetings, we have brought up the idea of putting together another committee looking at health effects of aircraft noise, maybe enlisting some of our local medical professionals in schools in the area to help us evaluate and understand health effects. And I had recommended to the roundtable that we ask the president of HMMH, my boss, Mary Ellen Egan, who has really spent at least a decade or two of her career really understanding where not only the U.S. but the world is in studying what has been done to date in studying health effects. And if this body would entertain a presentation by Mary Ellen Egan, she said she is available for the April meeting. If we're not prepared for it at that point, she could try to schedule another one, but she is currently available for April. So that's really the end of my presentation for today. It's just to recommend that we actually do request and ask for Mary Ellen to come. She's actually doing a similar presentation at another roundtable, I believe it is next month. It would be easy for her to come and give a presentation on it.
Absolutely.
Do I see some heads nodding? That feels like a good thing to do. I know that it has been a really big issue of high importance for a number of our members here. And I went back through my emails having to do with these health, and I think I printed out over 100 pages of emails from the constituents and from other people about it, and we've talked a lot about it. I know that, you had no, I thought it was Kathleen, no, but I do have 2 speaker slips from the public. But does anybody, shall we agree that we should invite her for the next meeting? Yes. Is that a good idea?
Sooner the better.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have 2 speaker slips on this item, Liz Lopez, and then Ray and Jay. So I have 3 speaker slips on this item. Max. Yeah, there you are. Okay.
I'm Liz. I actually just had a question to pose again. And also with these questions that we pose, do we ever get answers to them, or are we just posing them?
Sometimes, yes. No, we do try to respond. Mm-hmm.
How do they respond? Or is it like the next meeting? Or?
Well, if a member of staff can explain it real quick, they will. If not, they'll take it offline and talk after the meeting with the airport officials or ourselves.
So we stay after the meeting to get them answered?
Okay, Bert will talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Okay, so my question regarding health, because clearly there haven't been enough studies specifically on just airplane noise over homes. I wanted to know how are we studying like ultra high frequency sounds, radiation, and maybe very low energy, low frequency like vibrations going over our homes. And the reason I'm posing this question is I don't know if anyone's had the same experience I have, but when so much vibration is going over your house, like you start kind of feeling like you're shaking yourself.
Yep.
And there have been times where I've been like nauseous and have headaches, and also there have been times where I actually felt like my head was going to explode. Wow. And so I did want to make sure that, if no one can answer these questions, maybe we can whoever's speaking in regards to this, we can pose it to, who is coming for the health? What is the name of the person?
Egan.
Mary Ellen Egan.
Mary Ellen. If we can just pose these questions to her, like that these were questions and maybe she can answer them when she comes.
This is all very good, and these are the kinds of issues that we want to bring up for the health issues, and that was our thought about having panelists or medical professionals come and give us their knowledge. And so I think this is a first step of that, and then we could have more question and answer about it. And I'm sorry you're experiencing that. I really am sorry about that. So we're going to public comment, or are you going to try to quiz me? I'm not going to accept that kind of behavior. No more. Okay. Kathleen. Yeah. Okay. You've got a minute left.
I hear that you're exploring the health effects. I've done some research on health effects. There's a good study from Harvard University. There's a good study from Oxford University. So these studies have been, they're there. They're long, they're in depth, PhDs. The data's there. The health effects, the cardiovascular issues, the learning effects on children in schools. Europe is much more in advance in looking at health effects compared to the United States. But these are excellent universities, Harvard and Oxford. They're right there, and they're nice journals. And the British Journal of Medicine has a nice publication as well. So all this data is already there. It'd be nice, you're acknowledging it, but it seems like many city councils and people are not aware of it. There's good information already there.
We hope to bring some light to this, to our body here, and then to our Congress, and to get some more buy-in into how serious it is and what can be done, solutions. So, Max, are you next? And then Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm Max Burns. I'm a psychiatrist in Pacifica that happens to be experiencing a lot of this terrible noise. And so I was asked to come and talk about some of the evidence that we do have. And Europe is much further ahead. decided to pick up the article on the WHO, the World Health Organization's recommendations, and there is causal, evidence showing a causal relationship between exposure of airplanes, especially at night. That's why we're all focusing on trying to change the night noise in particular. So they have found sufficient evidence, and the decibel levels that the World Health Organization recommends are much lower than what we recommend here. And it's been shown that insomnia usually starts happening, you can see it on an EEG, at about 35 decibels. You can get people having insomnia significantly at 42. Health effects, hypertension, increased myocardial infarction, depression, exacerbation, anxiety, that can happen at 50. So even below the 55 level, we're going to see people have significant health impact from this. So I'm happy to give out any information, journals, access to some of them. I'd like to connect with more of my colleagues. I'm here to help the panel.
Thank you. I think that's why we're all here, right? Because that's why I come to these meetings. I see the members of my community, especially the more vulnerable people, people fighting disease, the elderly who have greater sensitivity, and sleep issues. So I know that's why we're here. There is an article in the Washington Post, February 6th, that you can look up, which explains why noise is considered a cardiovascular risk factor. It's a little bit like cholesterol. And the impact is really when it's carried out for several years. So it's not because we experience noise one day. And therefore, the design and all the decisions that are happening have an incredible impact, huge impact on thousands of people. So in this design process, transparency, trust, that's what's important. It's because of this health issue. And I've learned a lot of things in the last few years, and one of them is that we've kind of bemoaned what we cannot measure because the FAA 65 threshold, and yet they have given us the opportunity to make recommendations to them. I didn't think that's such a great idea because we're not experts, but they asked us for our design criteria. And in that process, the orders and the rules allow for having supplemental metrics to measure how, for example, the frequency of events is an issue, not just how loud something is. So there are really great opportunities to work with health in the context of what are we going to do with it, and what are the opportunities for us to be able to make the design process something that can really help all the people that need that help. So I thank you for making progress on this end, and I think GBAS or the Surfer route is going to be an example of if this can work. Thanks.
I'll bring it back to our members if anyone has any comments on this. Sue?
Yes, Dr. Maxburn did give us the American Journal of College of Cardiology, and there's a great chart. So I'm going to send this down to you so you can look at a great chart on proposed pathophysiological mechanisms of noise-induced cardiometabolic disease. This is the American Journal, so thank you for that. I did a quick look at it, and it's impressive.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else? Have a comment to that? Okay. Well, we will work with Jean and come up with a presentation she'll do. And then maybe we can have another follow-on with panels. I mean, I just don't think this is a one-off thing. I think we're going to explore this a lot. Yes, Supervisor Hunter.
I think it'd also be helpful if she or our consultant can comment if there's any example somewhere else in the country where these health impacts have been, persuasive to get the FAA to do something.
Yes, with that, yes. And they do consult with airports all over the country, so they should have some
What I would say is really the intent of Mary Ellen's presentation at the next meeting is to provide us the status of what has been done to date as far as studying these issues, what's currently going on now, what's about to start, so that we at least have the understanding of where we're at, and maybe that can help this body then determine how we best participate or think about things that we could be doing to assist or further the studies.
Okay, all right. Item number 12. It's budget time, and James had wanted to bring a budget for review and approval tonight, and I said, I'd really like to have a subcommittee take a look at it before you just spring it on us. So we're going to push it out one more time, but I would like to get a small group, maybe part of the work program subcommittee, to review the budget. And if I can get a couple of volunteers.
If I may, so just I'm going to read off who we've had last year on the work program subcommittee.
Okay.
It was Ann Wingert, Ed Schneider from Millbrae, Sue Degree, Sam Hindi, and you. So now that we're at the beginning of the year, now's an opportunity to swap in folks, get some more people involved with that. But yes, the work program subcommittee typically does review the budget. It's just that with everything else that we had going on, we didn't have an opportunity to have that group come together to do that normal review process. So we'll be doing that in the next few weeks.
So I saw Sue's hand go up. She's familiar with the budget. Sam, are you available to help review the budget?
No. Trying to hide.
He goes, no, he doesn't have time. You did it last year for us.
Madam Chair, I'll volunteer.
Okay. Ricardo?
Subject
And
to
Ann?
make it
Good.
convenient.
I always try to do my best.
Good. I think we've got some good brains around this. So that we will bring the budget back with a recommendation from the Budget Review Committee. Okay, so the next two items I'm going to just turn over to James. Again, I told you this was a lot of housekeeping today, but it's something that we really need to do. So James, why don't you do 13 and 14 kind of?
Sure. So I'll be real brief about them because they'll be kind of simple. So number 13 is more about trying to get our agendas written more along the lines of our work program. So for some of you that have been involved in our work program groups, we typically do that in the late summer. And what the work program does is that outlines the work that we want to focus on and do over the course of the year. And we look at some of the things that we've done in the year prior, anything that's come up in between, and try to list out what those are. Unfortunately, most of our attention has been with NextGen and the initiatives. So for the last few years, our agenda has been mostly either focused on that or been a little bit more reactive. What I want to try to do is make sure that we go back and start having standing items in the regular agenda that follows our work program. And for those of you who have been with the Roundtable long enough, you've probably remember seeing that at some point in time. And what that does, it does a couple of things. First, it lends a little consistency in some of the topics that we are working on. So even though some of them we may not have anything new to report, somebody may care about that to want to see it, being followed up through. The other thing, it allows me and the consultants as well as the airport staff to also kind of have a framework of what we need to work on instead of kind of going from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting. So I think it's going to be really helpful for that. The other thing also is that it also provides a mechanism for members of the public who do raise concerns during the public comment period. It does give us an opportunity to find those places in our work program that we're able to respond to those, or at least be able to point to where your concerns are being met. So essentially that's what it does in certain ways. It kind of gets us back on track with that. The good news is a lot of stuff that has come out of the FAA initiative actually is already in some form or another gets plugged into the work program. And that's what we worked on, I want to say back in August. So there's a lot of overlap there. So what I want to do is just make sure that the agenda is going to be a little bit more structured at the second half of our meeting that follows up that work program, and then also some of these items that do come up get plugged into those to work that way. So that's item 13. And
can I just interrupt real quickly?
Sure.
But that would not preclude us bringing up other action items like Harvey brought up that we talked about doing, like a letter that we were going to write or some other kind of real-time issue that we need to discuss.
That's correct, yes. I just want to make sure that we have a mechanism that kind of, lends consistency in the things that we're working towards. So that's item 13. So that's something that you'll start seeing in our next agenda. Item 14 is in regards to the minute overviews. So for a number of years, we've done it as sort of a narrative way, and I'll be honest with you, it takes a really long time to do that. So now that our meetings are videotaped, and then usually within a few weeks we could have them transcribed, or I think there's now a feature that has the transcription come up already. What I want to try to get away from is the narrative and go more to an action bullet style meeting that some of you may already have been doing in your own city councils. So I want to kind of do that because it gets really tricky to try to summarize things, and I've been called out a few times for not including certain points, but given that these meetings are 2 hours long, it takes me almost double that to re-listen to parts of it, go off my notes, and then also be able to participate here. So I think it's going to just be easier. Now that we have video, we've had audio from the last decade of every meeting, so we do have everything accessible. So that's part of what that's brought up about in item 14.
So can we have discussion and then take action on this, please? Any discussion? Janet?
Yes, so under item 13, that actually addresses one of the concerns I had, that actually, when members take them, from the audience take the mic and say something, at what point do they get a response? And sometimes it is at the end of our meeting, and sometimes it's something we can address, but I actually think that will give us the more opportunity to actually
that's a smart
have it answer some of those questions on the spot. So I really like doing it a little more simple and streamlined. So yeah, good idea.
Madam Chair, I'd like to agree with that statement, and I think it gives the members of the public a better idea of what we're working on an ongoing basis, so that they don't think we're just letting things sit. So I think that item 13 makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
So on item 14, I'd like to call for a motion to approve that we're going to make the change of the minute. Annie? Moved. And a second from Supervisor Pine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? So that motion carries, and thank you, James. You've done a great job. But since we are videotaping it, it's really it's not necessary to do all the annotations.
We want James to put those 4 hours somewhere else.
Yeah. I think you've got a personal reason in the county.
No, there's a laundry list, and to the point of doing the work program items, that's sort of my behind the scenes work, is working with these guys to be
referring to that kind of work.
Yeah, so I'd rather much be doing that than to do the narratives.
Okay, so moving on to item number 15, it has to do with the potential expansion of our roundtable body to add 2 members of the South Bay communities of Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County. And I went through and rewatched our December meeting over and over and over, and I do believe that we had. It wasn't an action item, everything, but there was a general nodding of heads and consensus that allowed me to go to the Cities Association of Santa Clara County meeting. They had an ad hoc meeting on January 25th. I was there, so was Ann Wingert, so was James and Bert, and open-handedly said, while you guys are actively pursuing your South Bay Roundtable body, which they desperately, I believe, need to do, and I do believe that they are proactively moving that along. They had samples of their bylaws, which are kind of duplicative of what we have. I mean, they're kind of using our model, but it's big. It's Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County, and they have issues. You can see we have a lot of people coming here from the South Bay because they don't have a voice. But it's going to take some time. And so to the extent that we could open our body to 2 representatives, have to be elected official, I perceive it would be a supervisor from each county, similar to what we have for San Francisco County Supervisor. Of course, San Mateo County Supervisor is just a no-brainer, but that kind of a representative, it would not harm us. It would be a gesture of inclusiveness, and those constituents would have a representative to then have a voice to bring to the roundtable. So we did, and they were very receptive. The ad hoc committee, I mean, there's a ton of logistics that they would have to go through. There's a ton of logistics that we would have to do to actually literally expand the committee. They have not come back to us and said, absolutely, yes, that's the route we want to go. I believe they're holding a Cities Association meeting maybe tomorrow night, or maybe not until March or April. So it's not an immediate process, but I wanted to give you that update and kind of just let you know that I feel it's a good thing. It would be a good thing if we did it, but it wouldn't be an immediate thing. So I'd like to continue the conversation and open it up for any members' comments. I see Diane Pepin at the end, and then Supervisor
Sue was hogging the microphone. Yeah. No, I wasn't here in December, but I think the broader the constituency, the broader the power. And this group seems to do a lot of let's ask, let's see if they agree. And so when you bring in the likes of a Santa Clara County and a Santa Cruz County, and that combines with this county and San Francisco County, the voice gets louder and more powerful, hopefully. So yeah. I'm on board.
Thanks.
I guess we'll have to modify the MOU or something, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. James knows too. Supervisor Pine. Oh, yeah, and then Sue.
So the idea of trying to increase our voice by adding some members, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think we really want a high degree of certainty that these the Santa Clara representative and the Santa Cruz representative are that they really want this and that they'll really be active participants, because
absolutely.
People may know, but we have to go to every single city council to amend the MOU.
Yes.
And then I think I heard earlier in the meeting that maybe there's some interest maybe East, maybe I misunderstood, but on the East Bay, are they talking to us about a seat of some kind?
Oakland has their own forum already, and I think that we can do more than we're doing now with Oakland forum in a more meeting, maybe a quarterly meeting,
I see.
Or sending a representative to monitor their meetings or something. And as well as when the South Bay Roundtable is formed, I would expect that those representatives it would be kind of a temporary thing, that they would not, and then that we would collaborate as regional bodies. So, I mean, those things have to be, they have not said for sure that that's something that they want. And I think I presented it as sort of as an interim until they actually get formed. And maybe it'll take us the same amount of time as it takes them to actually do it or not. But yeah,
I mean, they could come. They could come immediately and just participate. I don't think anyone would necessarily It's just the formalities of making the change are such a. I mean, we really have to be sure that there's real buy-in and it's going to work. And in some respects, I'm with the creation of the new Santa Cruz Roundtable, which I believe will happen. A big question in my mind is how is that roundtable going to work on the issues with this roundtable, because all those flights are affecting all 3 counties. So, if I were SFO, is SFO going to be able to staff both of those efforts? If the flight, again, by definition, it's going to come into San Mateo. So we have, we all 3 of us have interest in these flights, all 3 counties. So, how are these 2 roundtables going to work and, not be duplicative?
Yeah.
And so to me, that is actually, a really important issue to get sorted out. And I'd be inclined to kind of not rush into changing our charter until things kind of settle out a little bit, because I guess we would want to have a seat on their roundtable too.
Yeah. So that's not what we're. We have not heard back from them. I mean, I think your first statement was they really have to want to have a representative from each county to come and meet with us in a collaborative way. Those 2 outside votes, I don't think would tip our voting if it was one way or another. I mean, I don't think it's that kind of a worry. I do believe, that's just my perspective, that they can come at any time, just like the members of the public come. But unless you are sitting at the table, in a voting authority, that it's more influence rather than some kind of a status, not of power but of position. I don't know. Ann?
Chair.
Oh, excuse me.
Supervisor Pine, just to answer one part of it, that was actually at the meeting we attended, discussed by some of the members of the Cities Association. How would we not be duplicative?
Right.
And it's always, in my mind, been a primary issue as well. And I think initially the thinking is that they may well ask 2 of our members to participate as liaison to their group, as we are asking them to be part of ours.
Right. That would make sense.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry.
So I think, and the concept, I think, is that everybody, I believe, is still struggling to create whatever regional body is going to be most effective when dealing with the issues created by San Francisco Airport, because it's clearly moved beyond just our group here, and as witnessed by the Select Committee. And so that I think, again, given the FAA's lack of leadership post all of their efforts 2 years ago, this is the first, I think, concrete step that I've seen since then to potentially continue forward. And I think it may be a little, it won't be completely efficient in the beginning, but hopefully something can emerge from it that will hopefully work for all of the involved parties, all the involved counties.
Madam Chair, so a few years ago we had a discussion about, and the question was about including Palo Alto, and there was a lot of back and forth, and at first I was all for it, and I guess for something sort of what Councilmember Pappen said, that the more the merrier, and then people came up to me and said, Ricardo, think about it for a moment. Their issues are not the same as our issues, and the closer you are to the airport, the more different they are. The issues in the city of Burlingame and everybody north of us are departure issues. Backblast for Millbrae, Burlingame, and Hillsborough, and then flyovers for the cities above that. Those are not the same issues that they're dealing with in Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties. So for that, back then, and I think it was the Chair Lentz at the time that convinced me that adding more people might distract from the issues that are important to the city of Burlingame and my neighboring cities. And for that reason, I'm opposed to adding anybody to the roundtable at this point.
Madison. I almost said Melissa. I knew it wasn't. Right, coming out.
Thank you for saying that. And Brisbane definitely echoes the same sentiment, and we've discussed this as a council. And we feel that, our focus and the thing that is really taking away from the quality of life from our citizens is departures. And that's what, we really want to focus on. And I think a lot of other cities that are sitting at this table can echo the same sentiment, and that the major concern with airplane noise right now is really coming from departures. And I think, adding other representatives may detract from what our main focus is. I think also, to put representatives here while they're establishing their own roundtable, I think once somebody is already a part of something, are we going to say then, once their roundtable is established, okay, you can leave now? I don't see adding representatives and then them leaving once they establish their own roundtable. I think that collectively 2 roundtables can work together, but to me it doesn't make sense to add additional members that are going to be focused on different issues than what is of concern, at least to the city of Brisbane. So that's our position, and we feel very strongly about that.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? Sue.
Yes, in the very beginning I was against it, then I was for it, and I'm back to being against it, actually, mainly because, number one, regional bodies collaborating, I think, is extremely important, and we're moving in that direction, and I hope with great speed. But just being able to comprehend all the technological parts, then to add more is mind-boggling, and I do worry about not giving enough attention to what we need to be, the departures in particular, although I am a little bit of a cynic and think that in due time we're going to be dealing more with arrivals as well. But so at the first times I heard it, I didn't catch that temporary part. And I am not speaking for my whole council. We haven't really addressed this, and I haven't addressed it with my core group that helps me out. However, I'm very much in favor of regional bodies collaborating and learning from one another so that we would understand the arrivals situation a lot better. But as this point, I personally do not feel like I want to expand the group. But again, I'm not speaking for my whole council.
Sam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to clarify, this body does handle arrivals as well. I mean, Ponce City, we are on the arrival path, but I do understand, I do get your point, not expanding the body especially. I mean, I'm all for collaboration. I'm all for adding more members of the community, the broader community as well. But given that they are establishing their own body, and this will be only a temporary thing, I don't see where the worthiness of it for us to go down that path. However, the importance of having both roundtables, if you will, collaborating, perhaps a subcommittee formation from this body with that body, have meeting on a regular basis, quarterly basis, coordinating strategy, how to approach the FAA, and how to deal with pretty much the same issues, but different angles, if you will. I think that would be more beneficial than expanding this roundtable to more members.
I've changed my position.
Good courtroom procedures here.
I've grown up enough to change my position. I like the idea of collaboration rather than necessarily the inclusion. Thank you for convincing me.
Sure. Anyone else? Annie.
Just one comment that I think that one of the members of the public kind of put it into perspective, where I'm sorry, I didn't remember who her name was, but she said, are we looking at what other groups are doing across the nation? So necessarily doesn't have to be just the back door. So we can collaborate with all across the nation as well.
So yes, and through our consultants, and we do have insights from what other roundtables or other noise forums are doing. Again, in order to vote, and we're not voting on this. There's no action or anything. This is just, and they have not come back to us to say, we really would love to have 2 members added to your roundtable while we continue to form our roundtable and to, understand and learn from you how you do it and what you're doing. They have not said that. And if we bring it back to the roundtable body, we need a 2/3 of the entire body, not just 2/3 of who is here today or a quorum to approve it before it then goes to the next step. So, all those hurdles have to be passed, and we're not there yet. But your comments, I have rebuttals to all of those arguments, but I won't go into them now. But this is just information only. Any more comments? Okay. I do have a public speaker comment card. Peter Marcuzio from the City of Oakland. He's a resident.
Good evening. Thank you, Roundtable. I'd just like to make a pitch on this. Whether you do or do not vote to include Santa Clara and Santa Cruz counties and all those, that's wonderful. My pitch is just for regional collaboration. It's important. If you want to change the FAA, you have to make their boss change their FAA. Who's the boss of the FAA?
Congress.
Congress. All together, one voice, all of our representatives, in my case, Barbara Lee, who's been working hard, Contra Costa County, same thing. I just can't emphasize it enough. Whether or not you add more people to the board, regional collaboration is important. One voice to our Congress, our senators, our Congress people, let them work on the FAA. That's important. They hold the money. They hold the money. They can make them change. They're the boss of the FAA. Thank you very much for listening.
All right. Going on to our other matters, item number 16. Jean has some aviation noise news and updates.
All right, I'll try to make this relatively quick. There's just a few anyway. One thing, the FAA administrator has changed. Daniel Elwell is currently the acting administrator. It remains unclear who President Trump will assign to this role or even when, but right now it's Daniel Elwell. Next on my list is the occurrences on the Southern California Metroplex developments. Certainly that's of interest to this body, seeing how we're dealing with the Northern California Metroplex. So the cities of Newport Beach and Laguna Beach have both reached settlements on their suits with the FAA. One for the city of Newport Beach, they've come to some agreements on procedures. One of them is a curved departure path that follows the bay out to the Pacific Ocean from John Wayne Airport. The city of Laguna Beach, there's FAA agrees to keep aircraft on prescribed departure path unless required to deviate for safety, which results in minimizing flights over the city at low altitudes of Laguna Beach. Lastly, in the Southern California Metroplex, the FAA is working currently to modify the LAX arrival path to avoid Lake Arrowhead at night. That was one of the considerations there for Lake Arrowhead. Next is oral arguments were heard in the Georgetown case over FAA implementation of 41 next-gen departures at Washington Reagan National Airport in D.C. Those, the arguments that were heard were mostly around the comment period has elapsed, and is that comment period realistic, and was it done correctly? So those were heard. You never know how those, the judge is going to react to the arguments, but they were heard recently. The World Health Organization, we've heard about that a few times tonight, or WHO. They're expected to issue update to environmental noise guidelines on the impact of aircraft, railroad, and other sources on annoyance, sleep disturbance, cardiometabolic disease, and other health impacts. Some of the preliminary conclusions from what we expect with this update is that the noise dose curves have shifted over time, and finding that people are more annoyed by aircraft noise than reported previously when they've done those studies. Annoyance is greater in areas of high rate of change, such as those we've experienced here with the airspace changes and other things that happen, like a new runway at an airport. The Transportation Research Board is holding a webinar next month on assessing community annoyance with helicopter noise. You can look that up on the TRB website if interested. Lastly, for the noise news is that UC Davis Aviation Noise and Emissions Symposium is occurring at the end of this month, February 25th to 27th in Long Beach at the Renaissance Hotel. Basically, the agenda overview, Sunday afternoon, there's some tutorial sessions. You can go to 2 out of 3 of them because they're staggered in time a little bit. They're having air traffic, emissions, and noise tutorials. Sunday evening, they're having a noise officers meeting. Airport noise officers are invited, and a community groups meeting where community groups such as a Roundtable are invited to attend. And then Monday and Tuesday are the general sessions, and Monday evening is a reception. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Harvey.
It had been reported that lawsuits against the FAA about NextGen from us would go nowhere, but now am I hearing that more successful lawsuits, and maybe that might be a path that could be taken? Does anyone have any input, opinions, stories?
Well, the ones that I commented on Southern California Metroplex, those have all been settled out of court at this point. But they started out with lawsuits. That's what it is.
Do you know if Phoenix was settled?
Excuse me, we're not going to have conversation. Yeah, we don't have conversation. Yes, sir.
I mean, just a quick comment for Harvey. One difficulty we have is that litigation was brought here by people in Portola Valley, and
I understand.
So that makes it a little, it's a little trickier for us. But your question's it should be asked.
Any other comments about Gene's update? Okay. Yes.
Member communications, just I want to mention real fast for
Yes.
those of you new members, we will be doing a Noise 101 in March. It'll be in early March, so I will be reaching out to some of you to hone in on a date. Usually what we do is it's a 3.5 hour in the morning. We do it at the airport. Half of it is going to be in the class. Half of it is going to be out in the airport. So I will coordinate with you all, and then I'll open up to the rest of the Roundtable membership for those who have not attended one or just want to have a refresher. So just be on the lookout for that.
Okay. Any comments, questions? It's really a fun thing. You really should go. Noise 101. Yes,
Could
Janet.
you put me on that list, because I don't think I've ever attended.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
and Sue.
Yeah.
You going to go again?
No, I missed it.
Oh, you missed it? Oh,
Signed up,
gosh.
knowing I
Okay,
won't go.
all right. Anybody else?
I'd like
And
to go.
Ron? Good, good. Okay, and Annie? All right, yeah, okay. All right, anything else?
Oh, yes, one more.
Yes, Sue?
We're on number 17, are we?
We're still on member communications.
Okay. Yes, so Pacifica City Council met regarding airport issues on January 22nd, and you can find us on YouTube, item 11. And what we did is we adopted the recommended position statements, and they're all there online, allowing for stronger wording at city manager discretion. Directed city attorney to reach out to other cities to see if anyone is already researching or if there is interest regarding legal action And 2, depending on the results of that, the city attorney is to authorize to spend a maximum of 25 hours researching the issues. So your attorney may want to chat with Michelle Kenyon, and you may want to see we had written a letter covering everything, and the manager had a good idea to break it up into propositions, is that the right word I want? That can be used either in a friendly letter or a more strong letter pertinent to wherever it was going.
Okay. All right. Good information. Anybody else? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and meeting adjourned. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian. Interesting first meeting. All right. 18 minutes over. Not bad.